Welcome to Calling All Growers. I'm your host, Liz Grow, and tonight you're learning from the best in our Calling All Growers hands-on workshop. Now, as you know, growers are the superstars of the cannabis industry, and there's nothing more valuable than to spend one-on-one time with them. Tonight, we're so lucky to have an award-winning cultivator share his vast knowledge about growing small and large scale. It's Zach Taylor of Bountiful Farms in Massachusetts. Zach, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Liz. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be on here twice, and I just really looking forward to our conversation this evening.
Absolutely. Yeah, some viewers may remember that we had Zach on a couple of weeks ago with breeder Greg OG, and we had some technical issues. I just feel like you were dropping too much knowledge for the internet to handle, Zach. So we're hardwired in now, so we can handle it.
We are AOL. We went back to the phone dial. We're in like Flint. We're ready.
Yes. Awesome. So before we dive in, I just want to remind the viewers out there that the chat room is open. So if you have any burning growing questions, now's the time to ask, because we've got the expert right here. Now, Zach leads the cultivation team at Bountiful Farms, which is a premium cannabis cultivator with a medical dispensary in Natick, Massachusetts, and a state-of-the-art cultivation center in Lakeville, Mass. Zach is known as a trailblazer and has been part of the medical cannabis community since 2007, when he began growing as a caregiver. He was one of the first 18-year-olds to receive a medical license in the state and was one of the first 5,000 licensed employees in the country. Zach, you've got some experience under your belt, my friend.
I do. We kind of, started this conversation last time, and, I started with, the fact that I really think it's, the right place, right time, and taking advantage of those opportunities. And I guess just to kind of piggyback off that, I really feel like everyone should grow their own. And I think that it's important to, really experience the simpatico relationship with the plant. And the smaller you start, the smaller your obstacles are, because that's what I think really becomes, the most important part of becoming a commercial grower is knowing a lot of what not to do, and then knowing how to kind of handle adverse situations and how to kind of overcome those obstacles. And that's really, in my opinion, the difference between the hobbyist level approach and the commercial level approach is, when you look at things from a scalability, not only from a KPI standpoint and obviously ROIs and all the fun things that we have to do when we answer to these CFOs, but then from in the gardening, when you look at the time and the labor that it takes to do some of these things on the hobbyist level, and then how can you kind of blend some of the more advanced, kind of European style of ag into that, but still maintain, home grow quality. I think it's important to note that even myself as a commercial grower, I still would expect my friend with a tent with 12 plants to be growing better weed because he has 12 plants, and, and he knows what he's doing. And you try to then, copy that the best you can when you grow close to 2 million plants a year. But that's the reality of the situation, is those 12 plants have your undivided attention. And it's trying to find those same principles, those same tactics that you do in that home grow, and then trying to apply those commercial. And so that's where I think, kind of that blend comes in. And I think that's what I've, learned over the years, as starting from, so there was, basically Senate Bill 109 and House Bill 1284 in Colorado, which made it to where you could only serve 5 patients at the time. And then those were ruled unconstitutional by the state, and then the floodgates were open, and there became more dispensaries than Starbucks and McDonald's combined. And so being a part of that entire kind of roller coaster and seeing all sectors of it, I will always, respect the home grow and never be a part of, kind of some of these others who think that they should be only the people that grow. And I think it's, it's those people that I think that have kind of lost the passion in what the plant truly is. And I think that's what we try to bring, at Bountiful Farms, is that hybridization of that love of the plant on the hobbyist level, but then also, making that applicable on a commercial level.
Yeah, scaling that to many more people, so many more people can enjoy the fruits of your labor. So how do you go about doing that, Zach? You know, keep maintaining that quality. Certainly some things will have to be sacrificed because you can't physically touch each, you know, every single plant. So how do you do that?
For sure. So, you know, I think that craft cannabis is often like going around New York City where you see on every deli world's best coffee. You know, it's become somewhat of a fallacy. It's become somewhat of a sales pitch. If I
Mhm.
could define it and kind of look at it from, you know, just a couple really key components, I think it comes down to having the time to have the attention to detail in your garden. And the only
Mhm.
way to do that on a commercial scale is to have a fertigation system. So you can hand water at home, and that's great. You can still give all that attention to detail. But once you get up to a certain scale, you do need, you know, some pulsing to where you have an exact amount feeding to each plant. And then, you know, that's kind of through, you know, PSIs and GPMs and, you know, looking at, you know, all of that fun stuff and runs and but then, you know, going back to, you know, the key points, I think the other is hand trimming. I think that you really to spend all that time on your product, you know, whether it's 10 weeks, 12 weeks, however long you're taking it, and then to take that and run it through a giant grinder is is a disservice in so many ways. I mean, when you put a macro kind of, you know, version of that, what you're seeing is you're seeing these heads and you're seeing these stalks and you're completely removing them. And then that has a negative impact all the way through. So all the way through, every byproduct that you then made of that is not the best byproduct it could have been because of how you handled that product in the harvest. And so you could have a fantastic, you know, grow team, and then it could be the vision of that particular entity to be able to flash dry. And that's what, you know, kind of machine trimming enables you to do. So then going back to the third, I think it's very important for the low and slow. It is, you know, you are allowing the chlorophyll to dissipate at a natural rate by, you know, actually, you know, hanging the plants. And you can remove some fan leaves, certainly, but even stripping all the plants there is a disservice because, again, you're disrupting those trichomes, those resin glands. It all comes back to the preservation of those.
Mhm.
And then, you know, going into, you know, I think the other key component is it's really challenging to be pesticide free. I'm very, and I think that comes down to, you know, having the infrastructure to where you can have, you know, complete control of your swings when it comes to dew points, when it comes to really relative humidity, when it comes to vapor pressure deficit, when it comes to all of these things that then have an impact on, you know, negative components. But I think, you know, beyond pesticide free, I think you need to definitely be spray free in flower. I think it's really important, again, going back to the resin glands. You know, these are hobbyist level approaches that then should be taken on a commercial scale, which are hard to do. But I think those couple things define craft cannabis and then, you know, keep it on, you know, that hobbyist scale of, again, the ultimate goal is preservation of resin glands.
Yes, yes, yes. And so treating it as not gently, but with as much love as possible throughout the entire cycle, no matter how many plants you have. You know, certainly the goal, because you just have a better product, a more potent product, more potent medicine at the end of the day. And that's how any commercial cannabis brand makes a name for itself. Right. It seems like the market is just absolutely blowing up and feels like there's a lot of money floating around. What has been your experience with groups coming into cannabis that may not have, is, you know, that may not come from the industry and maybe think of this plant as just kind of another industry to come into, or just another product that's kind of blowing up? What have you had any experience with kind of dumb money in cannabis?
Well, certainly. You know, I guess going back to, you know, I've been lucky enough. So commercially, I've been doing this 13 years.
Mhm.
So, you know, like my, you know, the legends I looked up to, you know, the Jorge Cervantes, the Ed Rosenthal, you know, with I admired them so much. And that's what we really had as our literature growing up. And then there was kind of this moment after running commercial scales of hundreds of thousands of square feet for several years where I realized that it was at that point in time that the people that were working on that scale probably had seen more plants than those gentlemen saw in decades because of the commercialization of that. And so I bring that up because I think that there's
Yeah.
room for everyone in this. And obviously it takes money and it takes capital and it takes, you know, the CFOs that understand that. But then there's a really hard crash course of understanding that this is a living organism. And so we're not making widgets here. I talked last time, the company I worked for originally was an old Sealy mattress factory. And then they were like, all right, we're growing weed. They tried to take those employees and grow weed. And, it
You got the
just, it
customer
doesn't,
service person, like, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's ridiculous.
So it certainly is a business, obviously, right? But
Yeah.
it's the understanding that, when you try to take a principle and then apply it throughout, you're never going to be able to do that. And then this goes across all sectors. So when you're trying to grow multiple strains, every strain has different coefficients to that, whether, that's the overall consumer when they look at the TAC or when they look at the terpenes. But then from our end, when we look at what that plant grows per square feet, and then when we look at our grams per square foot, and then we look at how we go about trying to then mimic that, and then you look at the coefficients of each plant's green waste, and all of these things play an impact, and you're never going to get what you want in all sectors. So oftentimes your lowest yielding plants are your highest tacking plants. And so then it comes down to, again, a conversation of what is your ultimate goal as a business. And I think there's room for all of us, but I think it's important to understand the ultimate sacrifice and extra effort it takes to kind of try to go that craft beer route. There will always be the Budweisers. There just will. That's just what will exist. But there are other microbrews that share that experience with the community. You go to their brewery. It's an experience. It's much different than going and picking up a 12-pack of Bud Light. And so I think that's where I would say there's room for all. And I think it takes the right relationships to find that. And that's why I moved my livelihood, to Massachusetts. Is I'm truly grateful after, 10 plus, years of, looking, I finally found, an outfit that, allowed me to kind of put my craft, forward in the way that I, saw it fit.
That's so awesome. So you were basically recruited out of Colorado to Massachusetts to run cultivation for Bountiful Farms.
I was. I met the investors in 2017. I moved out here in February 18, and then I worked with a plethora of different engineers and helped design the facility and kind of put my footprint on it, which I think is important. I think every grower grows differently, so I think it's incredibly challenging to take over another grower's facility because, as great as they were, you're going to do it differently. I mean, there's so many ways to do this, and there's manufacturing best practices, certainly, and then kind of craft best practices, as I alluded to earlier, but there's always going to be differences in how each grower does things. And so to be able to, build your own grow as a grower is every grower's, kind of dream come true.
Absolutely. And you've got that opportunity. I mean, walk me through that. What did that look like? I guess maybe why don't we start from the beginning? For those viewers who work with us in the first time you were on Calling All Growers, when did you first start to grow cannabis? And how old were you? And walk me through from then to now.
Sure. So it was pretty close to 18. And then, yeah, let's do that. And then, my mom has actually been a huge supporter of me since day one. And back in the day, it was incredibly difficult for an 18-year-old to get a license. You had to have several parent consent forms, and she was willing to do so. And so I was, patient first, and then became a caregiver. We actually just lost her last year, but my best friend's mother was my first patient, and we called her Lady. She was the best. So kind of through that, and then I had other patients who, high school friends. I had a dear friend with cerebral palsy who I went to high school with. He became, one of my patients, and so it was a true unique relationship where I really started to understand what this plant could do for people. And then so I started my own little LLC, and then kind of as I, talked about, when the state ruled it, where the floodgates opened, I was 21 at the time. So I joined one of the larger firms, moved my way up quickly, and then was able to run that little over 100,000 square foot facility. And then
at what age? 21?
Yes, yes. And then
Did you find that was unique? That you were one of the younger ones, or was it
I was definitely, it's very weird, now in my crew now, I'm the, the elder statesman of time, but it is a young industry, but it's, it's, but it's cool to
21 is
see that.
very young. You were
Yeah,
just able to
but
have a beer.
no beard, no tattoos. I was a young buck then, but
Yeah, well, I just said you were finally able to have a beer and you were
oh
growing
yeah, I don't know if
100
I could grow one then
perfect.
though.
No, a beer, like drink a beer.
Oh, beer.
21 years old and
Gotcha.
you're managing this massive commercial grow and you're like, hey, I can finally like drink legally, which is neither here nor there, but it is pretty funny.
Yeah. I guess I never thought about it that way. But so yeah, I mean, so I did my thing in Colorado, met some amazing people. Was fortunate enough to win, several cups there and kind of build a name for myself. And so then this company, recruited headhunters and then or rather they, had a headhunter recruit me. And then through the, kind of evaluation, they decided to give me a chance. And, I kind of told them, the way that I would take the risk was if they would allow me to kind of have my, fingerprint all over it. And they were certainly willing. So myself and a dear friend of mine, Jesse Elkins, who was kind of the first one of the people to specialize in HVAC for commercial cannabis. So, and why that's really important is when you look at occupancy, when typical RTU and a typical HVAC, you're looking at occupancy, you're looking at how many people the room has, you're looking at how much the square footage of the room, and you put a tonnage based on that. There's so much more that goes into the British Thorough units and the tonnage of a cannabis because you have to deal with not only the constant air exchange, but the transpiration of the plants themselves. And, particularly when you're in the later weeks with thousands and thousands of plants, those dew points are everything. If you can't control those, that's where, you run into, the danger zone in a commercial sector. So, um, I guess kind of the full circle there was, it was, I, had learned a lot of what I wanted to do in Colorado and then was able to put that blueprint here. So the three things that we really focused on was, having an environment that could really, kind of mimic what we were putting forth as a grower. I think it's a 33.3% equation. I think the growers make up that one part. I think the genetics make up the second part. And I think the environment makes up the third part. And I think the environment is the thing that is so lost in the commercial sector because it's all about dollars at the end of the day. But I think that's, to use the approach of, I think that's a finite versus infinite approach. But so, the other thing that we really looked at was sustainability. So as we go into phase two, we went into an LED sector. We're able to, the original build out, we worked with, Hydrologic, which is now with Hawthorne, but we were able to work with those engineers and have, basically a fertigation head house that enables us to recirculate 75% of the water that we put in. So there's a plumbing chamber pit underneath. It pumps that up, and then it goes into three different filtration tanks. Everything, basically leads back just to an RO. So everything from a calcite, from a DI, then just back to your plain Jane carbon. And then those are, again, much larger than your commercial grow. Those are 10,000, 20,000 gallons a day units that are able to, kind of help us, still remain somewhat carbon friendly. That's one of the biggest challenges when you're building these grows is how do you, it was meant to be in Mother Nature, obviously, with the elasticity of the plant, and, 1937, all this fun stuff. We're back, indoors, but also it helps us provide a better quality, particularly here in Massachusetts, where the par values and the daily light integrals are just not optimal for outdoor growing. In Colorado, there's 300 days of sunshine. You can still get some, California, but here it's, we're second to, Seattle in annual rainfall. So it's definitely not ideal for, but yeah. So I think it's just important to look at progression and look at how this industry constantly changes. Look at MJ, BizCon, and you really can kind of use that as the pillar of where the industry has gone throughout these years. A couple of years ago, there was the whole thing with CO2 machines. You barely see those anymore. That just shows you kind of the industry trends. This year, it was all automated packaging machines, and So you really kind of see where the bottlenecks are and you see where the trends are. And then, I think that's one of the challenges of building out is the fly by night companies. I think
Mhm.
that's going back to, it's important to actually find people who are skilled and, truly masters in their craft, and then find a way where you can then piggyback off them into cannabis, as opposed to trying to, work with these companies who unfortunately take advantage of us because we're cannabis companies with the green tax, and then with the ignorance of, or rather with the notion that there's ignorance behind the people, behind that money.
Right, right. Are you finding that the community or the industry itself is really filling those gaps faster and faster, or are we still kind of seeking outside solutions and trying to kind of retroactively fit them to the way that we do things?
I think that's the biggest, or excuse me, that's the fastest growth in this sector, is that sector. Yes, I mean the
Mhm.
crossover. I mean, I think it's imperative, especially as we commercialize. We can all need to work together. I mean, as an example, the lighting company that we worked with, they're a truss company that does, kind of roadie. They put on shows. They put on rock shows, and then we use those same, trusses, and we powder coated them, and then they fit our lights. I mean, so it's kind of those type of things where you see, the mobile shelving company we work with, PIP. They've been in doctors' offices and in libraries for 10 plus decades until they got into the cannabis sector. They just powder coated them. They made them a little bit more versatile. They made them a little bit more, um, I guess, cumbersome, or less
Mhm.
cumbersome, I should
Yep.
say. But yeah, I mean, so all those things, really kind of help with the crossover.
Definitely, definitely. So I imagine that you have a pretty big bag of tricks, just being in the industry for so long and having seen, having gone from the small, craft grow, caregiver grow to a massive commercial grow. What do you think you could teach our viewers tonight? Any tips or tricks that would help improve their grows, whether they are home grows or whether they're growers who've got aspirations to go commercial, or whether they are already commercial growers who are trying to learn from the best.
Sure. I think data analyzation would be one of the key things I would say. So whether you're a
Okay.
hobbyist level at home, get yourself, a dual meter, make sure that you're recording your pHs, make sure you're recording your ECs, make sure you're looking at your drybacks. You don't necessarily have to have, tensiometers and any of these fancy machines to actually measure percentages, but you should be noting how your medium is drying back and when to feed your plants. You know, uh, you know, Another, kind of, I think, important aspect, besides that data analyzation, is to really kind of analyze one component at a time. It's
Oh,
really common for us as growers to just, we love it, right? So we're very passionate, and it's like being a chef, and I'm gonna add a little of this and a little of that, and then you made the greatest recipe in the world, but what the hell did you do? So
yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's where it goes back to, truly analyzing your data. But the only way you can really do that is to go back to the scientific method and try to, have independent and dependent controls, and really see if what you're studying is, or, if all the factors are kind of coming into play. So,
right.
beyond that, I would say that one of the things that I think is really important is an organic, kind of, IPM. And so, tidbits that I would try to say, Beneficial Insectary out of California. They're a great company. They're one of the largest, that are able to provide, beneficial insects, primarily for our industry, beneficial
Ooh,
mites. So now these are by no means, cure-alls. If you have an infestation, these are not going to help you. These are, again, I guess another tidbit there. This would be proactive versus reactive. Um,
okay.
so starting with, if you had a small vegetative garden, and you, as opposed to, spraying pesticides, I would suggest inoculating that garden with beneficial insectaries, and then kind of trying to hit it with 3 stages. So you could use rogue beetles such as Delocias. You could use predatory mites such as Sawarskis, Calicornificus, all of these things to kind of try to hit different sectors to kind of try to eliminate, different pests, anything from, fungus stats to thrips to mites. Again, these are not cure-alls. They're
Yeah.
just, if, kind of looking at, beneficial bacterias outweighing bad bacterias, if you can build a great enough of a colony, then the bad bacterias will not, win, more or less.
Right. So it sounds to me like this, a fair amount of thought should go into these preventative measures before you even start your grow. Is that what you do? Do you do kind of like a pre-production plan? Or is it more, we have these tools if we need them, if we need to use them, we'll use them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes, back to, again, attention to detail. So, if I, was back at home on the hobbyist level, even we still take preventative measures like we take today. And so, we would, at home, I would have grow only clothes, in which I would only wear those, clothes in my grow. Same thing, as we got on a commercial scale, we change out into scrubs. So, I mean, that's really just trying not to, bring the negative things from inside, or outside inside. And then just, from that, I mean, again, the proactive versus reactive, I can't really reinforce that enough, because once you are able to focus on your attention to detail on the quality of the plant versus the issue that that plant has, that's really where you're going to succeed. And the only way you're really going to do that is just to kind of, it's cleanliness, is, it's godliness, it's whatever kind of analogy you want to use. It's, cleaning your scissors, realizing that these plants have viroids, realizing that you can transfer things. It's just attention to detail and diligence. And we're never going to be hospital clean by any means on any of these sectors, but it's realizing, kind of that with every move that you make, you are that vessel, more or less.
Right, right. You are the one who's either introducing smallpox into the colony or helping to heal it and help it thrive.
Right, but
Um,
just absolutely. Yeah.
no, I mean, I really appreciate that point and that tip, if you will, if you even want to call it a tip. But I think a lot of growers need to hear that, because especially, certainly home growers and hobbyists and growers who are just getting into it. They're excited to do the growing part of it. And, to grow hygiene isn't really, the thing that makes them excited. So it's important to mention that, I think, time and time again. Because what's it all for if you end up bringing something bad into your grow and then your entire crop is ruined, you know? Okay, so we have heard some amazing tips already from Zach Taylor of Bountiful Farms. And unfortunately, we're going to have to take our first break of the night so that we can hear some messages from our sponsors. But don't worry, when we come back, Zach will still be here and he will still be offering his great, vast knowledge to you, for you. Chat room is open, so don't be shy. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
We've got breaking news for all farmers and growers out there. How would you like to defer the taxes you pay on your grow? Now you can legally, thanks to a discovery by agricultural tax attorney Michael Berwick of the law firm Greenspoon Martyr.
I have been working with tax deferral for 20 years, and my team at Greenspoon Martyr in the tax area got together with our team in the cannabis area. And putting our heads together collectively, we have determined that this major tax deferral clause includes the growing of cannabis.
Now, don't think that this is a new tax code clause, because it's been around for over a century.
Absolutely. This provision's been around for over 100 years. It was designed for agriculture. It was put in force at a time when we had a much more agrarian economy, big lobby for agriculture and farming, and that definition of agriculture has grown and expanded over the years. And again, it now includes cannabis.
How does it work?
Essentially, it will allow the taxpayer, if done correctly through us, it will allow the taxpayer to defer all state and federal ordinary income taxes for 30 years.
To find out more and see if you qualify as a grower, contact Michael Berwick at 305-789-2761 or call toll-free 888-491-1120 and ask for Michael Berwick's office, or just email him at michael.berwick, that's BURWICK, at gmlaw.com. Check Grow Kit. It is everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information.
It stands for Regulation Crowdfunding. And what it is, the SEC put together this plan after the Great Recession back in 2008, 2009, where we were bailing out Wall Street, the big bailouts, too big to fail. So we're bailing out huge banks like Bank of America, we're bailing out Ford Motor Company, et cetera, while the little guys on Main Street are closing their doors. Oh, well. And there was so much backlash that initially under the Obama administration, they created this Reg CF plan. And it was so popular and it worked so well that under Trump, they doubled down on it and expanded the program. And what it does is it allows the average retail investor like you and me to be able to invest in pre-IPO companies, basically buy shares of companies. With a Reg CF offering that we're doing, we have basically pretty much gone through all the steps you need to do when you're doing an IPO. Now, we're not sold on the public markets, which is still considered private equity, but you basically buy shares we use the Start Engine platform, and now anybody can go and buy shares. When Facebook first launched, the banks were buying shares at $5 and $10. It IPO'd at 20. I put in a buy offer as just a random Joe retail customer. I put in a buy order the night before. Computers execute instantaneously, right? I think my buy went in at like $34 by computer execution by the time it opened, while the banks got to buy it all at $5 and $10. Well, this allows you and me to be able to buy into these pre-IPO companies at favorable rates.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Calling All Growers Hands-On Workshop. I'm your host, Liz Grow. And as a reminder, the chat room is open. So if you have burning cannabis questions, guys, don't be shy. Put them in the chat room. And Zach Taylor, my guest from Bountiful Farms, will do his best to answer them. Zach, welcome back.
Thank you.
So before the break, we were chatting a bit about practices that growers of all, whether they're small scale or large scale, should put in place and should think about before even starting their grow. Some of those things were preventative measures, such as, I'm so sorry, I'm going to screw it up, but insects essentially that you are introducing to the environment that.
You didn't screw it up.
I didn't know insects. Okay, good. I figured there was a more scientific way to say it.
The beneficial insectary is the, I guess, technical, but insects they are.
Beneficial insectary. So, I mean, I imagine beneficial insects have been being used in cannabis cultivation by clever cultivators since the beginning of time. But when did you see them being introduced, I think, on a commercial level? Or commercial
You know, it's actually, I would say, something that's really taken off over the past, you know, maybe 5 years or so. I think that as all of us become more aware of the health hazards. I mean, gosh, there was, you know, I mean, articles last week about the you know, the glycophosphate, if I'm saying that word correctly, you know, the awful, you know, chemical in, you know, Roundup that's, you know, found in everyone's urine now, you know what I mean? So it's when you just look at, you know, pesticides and how they're used in commercial ag outside of cannabis, but then you look at the challenge with cannabis is, you know, regardless of whether those okay on a commercial ag standpoint, not getting into that argument, but just on the argument of how do you wash off a cannabis bud? You don't, right? And so then you look at, and then, so all of these things, I think really have taken off over the past 5 years with just, you know, the education and the understanding of the preventative, you know, measures it takes to then be able to use these. But before we didn't have that, you know, we had 100 growers and all of us were going grow to grow and doing this and doing that. We really didn't know any better. And so we were, you know, some of our own worst enemies in a lot of those ways. So, yeah, I think over the past couple of years, as the, you know, the money has been put into these facilities, you know, I mean, again, you know, certainly I'm you know, one of them, but there are, you know, others, you know, certainly, you know, others multi-million-dollar facilities. And it's really what it takes to be able to have these controlled environments to then to be able to use these organic measures. Otherwise, you're really spinning your wheels. You're never going to be able to use these successfully without a successful environment, going back to the third equation of 33% of it being your environment.
Right, right. And you would say that that equation holds true whether it's a large scale grow or a small scale grow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. That's just I think that's just, you know, across the board.
Right, right. Do you ever find that other growers maybe look at you differently now that you are a head of cultivation for a major player in the Massachusetts market?
Yes and no. I think that there's, I think that the you know, most of it is all love. But I also think, going back to my earlier point, I think that if you're growing 12 plants, it should be better. So I'm not disagreeing with that, you know. So I think that, you know, but I think the other kind of common misnomer is that I really despise the term master grower. You know, especially where I come from in Colorado, that's just, it's really taboo. It's really cliche because everyone uses it, and it's, you can't really master something that no one really has. There's no blueprint for this on a commercial scale. I think there are, you know, you could be a master grower on your hobbyist level, sure, but on a commercial level, I think that we're, you know, still always learning. And then I think that it's important to understand the constant innovation, not only of the technology, but of the strains. And so that's, again, what goes back to being a master grower, going back to, you know, the DJ Shorts of the world. His blueberry was amazing, right? Because that's what he did.
Yeah.
You know, he's not growing 50 strains. So it's, I think that's, you know, I think it's important to, you know, I mean, that was the two largest misnomers, I would say, is, you know, that we're not any better. We're always, you know, students of this. And then, you know, secondly, I smoke my buddy's home grow too. I smoke everybody's weed. I think it's important to smoke everybody's weed. It's not like, you know, yes, I'm a weed snob, and yes, I do the QC. I smoke a lot of my own weed, absolutely. But I need to smoke others' weed to see how we stack up. If you only smoke your own weed, I think you're not truly evaluating the community, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. So what was one of the things that you might have been known for in the early days when you were doing caregiver grow? Was there anything that your product was known for, or you yourself were known for as a grower?
Yeah. That's a great unexpected question. Yeah, so I guess how it worked was, you know, you could sell you sold to your patients, and then you were allowed to donate your surplus to dispensaries. Back when dispensaries didn't have, their own grows per se.
Right.
And so, again, going back to the, kind of the macro, micro, scales of home grows, I only had 4 strains at the time. And the first ever strain I had was Bubba Kush. I still have her today.
Wow.
I bred her with a Skywalker OG, and then we named her
Killing me.
Colorado Bubba. So she's very, we pheno hunted her, and then the pheno hunt, or the version we picked is very similar to the mom. It was, again, back in the day, you didn't really know what it was. We weren't sure if it was a Katsu Bubba or a pre-98 Bubba, and they're completely different in terms of the Katsu Bubba is very sweet, very fruity. Pre-98, going back to Mark Emery and what happened with that large DEA raid, and the seeds that were lost. So there's a genetic, break after 98. So pre-98 is a lot of like those old school lineage, that kind of true Afghan. She sometimes kind of resembled a little bit of both, but if I had to guess, I believe she's a Katsu cut. And then, we crossed her to a Skywalker OG, and so we have her now out here as Colorado Bubba. But to answer your question, I was predominantly known for my Bubba Kush, and then I loved DJ Short back in the day, and I grew a lot of his flow. So that was really like old school popular strain. So that's a purple tie Afghani. So I made, those were kind of my bread and butter. And then I had a old school Rasta friend who had this crazy strain, and that's like the one that got away. Every grower talks about the one that got away. She was a Northern Lights times tie stick. So tie stick is usually like a 15, 16 weeker, but with that Northern Lights, it made her like an 11, 12 weeker. And I mean, it was, I never have had experienced the old tie stick, but man, it was crazy funk. So those were, that's what I really was, known for. And then I had patients that really, enjoyed both. And then, I had, dispensaries that I was able to donate to as well. And so, those were what I was known for in the predominant years.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So now that you are responsible for millions of plants, what are you known for now? What is Bountiful Farms known for?
Our best selling strain is Pina Grande. It is, and this is just a complete, I guess. By no means do we only grow strains that I bred. So this is just, I guess, a nice segue, but it does happen. We were fortunate enough to win Best Grass in Mass last year.
Wow.
And that was with Pina Grande. So that was a collaboration I did with 2 really good friends back in Colorado. And we crossed a pineapple chunk from Barney Seeds, which is it's a pineapple skunk OG. And then we took that times a Skywalker OG, and then, kind of pheno hunted that at Bountiful Farms, a little over 450 seeds. So, and then through that, you're going to find, 4 or 5 different representations. It's kind of going back to, basic biology, punted alleles, dominant and recessive, and you're going to find one that's closer to mom, one that's closer to dad, kind of a hybridization, and then the one that's how the hell did you get here?
That's right.
So she was the nice hybridization. So she, really resembles her OG in terms of the internodal stacking, her calyx development, but she's truly Pina Grande in her, terpenes. She is, really high for, flower content. But, going back to, innovation, we did our first pheno hunt for flower. Now we're doing a whole different pheno hunt for rosin and for resin production. So, those are 2 different animals. Even with the same strain, the pheno that you would pick for flower is often a different pheno that you would pick for resin production based upon how hydrophobic that resin is, based upon, her overall terpene, her, internodal stacking, the structure, her leaf morphology. There's so many factors that go into it. But that was a long-winded answer of, Pina Grande is our best-selling flower currently, but we are also known as one of the only brands that are really focusing on rosin production. And why that's
Right.
challenging is it's a quality in, quality out. When you're looking at distillate and you're looking at other forms of extraction, you can do that with, quote unquote biomass, with byproduct of the plant. When you're talking rosin, it's a fresh frozen product. So it's product that was, frozen within an hour of harvesting. And again, going back to preservation, you're making sure that you're not rupturing those trichome glands so that those glands are able to then make it into that bath and then go through the various microns. And then, it's kind of what, it's through that approach. And then the yield percentage is often why most people don't take that approach. And when you look at, something like a hydrocarbon extraction versus a, solventless extraction, you're talking, a 15% loss or greater in overall return, but it's a much different product. It's an unadulterated product. And so, those are the two things I would say that the Bountiful Farms are known for currently, is really trying to focus on, some different strains that maybe some others don't have. There's a lot of, dispensaries that all grow the same, and that's great. But we're trying to, bring a little bit of variety. Trying to, check a plethora of different boxes. If chem's your thing, if OG's your thing, a little bit of fruit forward, a little bit of cream, trying to check all of those and then bring that forward, because some of that is better delivered in that rosin form rather than that flower form. So I would say those are the two things that we're really, trying to put our footprint in the Massachusetts sector.
That's great. That's really, really great. I love hearing that you're hunting for rosin specifically. I mean, it's all about focusing on the outcome of your work and of your labors. Are you going to smoke the flower? Are you going to puff the flower? What are you going to do with it? And that's, I think, a key point that so many growers make when they come on the show. It's, to new growers. That's their tip. Think about what, you want the end result to be, right? Is it a great smoke? Are you going to squish it? What do you
That's
do?
that's great. That's great advice. Yeah, because you're never going to get all in one, and if you're looking for all in one, it's kind of the jack of all trades, master of none, right?
That's right. That's right. Then you just have some nice smoke and you can smoke it. It's great, but you're not going to win any awards for that.
Yeah.
I'd love to go back to the kind of pheno hunting for rosin specifically. What are you looking for, and what might surprise growers to hear that, oh, I'm looking for these characteristics and these traits? Yeah.
I'm not sure if it would surprise, but I think that when you first start going down this, this rabbit hole, you have your love for the flower plant and the area, or rather the plant, in its flower form, I guess would be a better way. And you learn early on that plant, that pheno, oftentimes doesn't wash the way you want it to. So, and I think that one of the things that, we really, was interesting through the pheno hunt that we went through is the difference in resin production. So first off, what we're looking for is, kind of a bulbous head, and then, a large head that then has, kind of a weak neck. And so, and then, what I'm describing here is, like this trichome stalk, and then the head in which is on top. And then if the kind of, if the neck is a little bit weaker, then it enables just that head itself to fall off, as opposed to the stalk itself, which then has an impact on the overall viscosity and the overall kind of texture of that rosin. So if it's only heads and then it's a specific micron, then that's the creme du, that's the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
So we're really looking for, the grittiness, the sandiness of that resin, and we want it to be hydrophobic. We don't want it to be like oil and water. And so then through that, and then we're looking obviously for color as well. And then you try to kind of find your perfect blend. We do separate our first washes from our second and third washes. And so our first washes are specific microns, and only the first wash. And then as we continue to agitate, then we'll take those and then we'll make that into a different grade as well as an edible grade, before the actual rosin production. But I think what would surprise you and what you're looking for, again, is going back to what often as growers, when we take our gloves and we go across the heads and we're like, man, look at that grease. That grease doesn't necessarily transfer particularly when you're trying to make resin or rosin, you actually want that to be more hydrophobic. You want your glove to almost be covered with keef. That would then be a better indication that that plant would be a better washer than if your plant was more or less covered in, a greasy oil resin.
Wow, that is such a great point, and I think that is something that a lot of growers are gonna need to hear. Because it does seem counterintuitive, like, look at that grease, this is gonna make for a, really awesome rosin, and. But that's not the case. That's really interesting. So what do you get if it's a particularly, if you get that grease, it's just a lower quality rosin, or?
It's not that it's a lower quality at all. And again, that's what it's a challenge. It's the percentage. When you look at the, if it's again going back to the oil and water analogy, you're going to be getting less than 2% of a yield to rosin, because your yield to hash is going to be about 1.5 to 2% higher than your yield to rosin, because again, every time you change form, you're losing a percentage of it. So it's really not viable whether you're at home or whether you're commercial. We still all do it and we love it, but if it's less than 1.5%, it's really challenging to say it's worth your time. That means that on a 28 gram press, that means that you're not even getting 2 grams. You know what I mean? That makes it really hard to. Again, it could be great. I'm not saying it's not great, but then there's so it's interesting how that grease actually comes out later through the rosin process, more or less. You know what I mean? And then there's different strains that are just flat out dry and matte in their rosin, in the resin. But then there's that actually have that terp and then that wetness in their actual, rosin. But that doesn't necessarily have to do with, how that resin is on the plant per se,
Right. There's a lot of what they call bro science, happening, and just because it's a industry that's coming out of, the dark, and growers have, no pun intended, but cultivated their own methods and their own beliefs about their methods. And so I love to learn. I just love to learn things like what I just learned that could go completely against what I would think. And I think what, maybe other growers who aren't as learned as you are would think as well, about what that plant will produce. So that was a really, really great tip, Zach. So what's next for you and Bountiful Farms? Are you entering any cups?
We are. That's one of the things that we really enjoy. Obviously the entire world has, changed since, since COVID. But last year, Cultivators Cup was really just kind of the coming out party. It seemed like for the community, it was in September of last year. And so it was, kind of when everyone was finally getting out. And so we had such a wonderful time at that event, and we're really looking forward to it again this year. So we're planning to be a part of that again this year. And so, we'll certainly see what happens. We never, go into these cups anticipating anything. If anything, it's about the relationships in which you build, but throughout the networking. But we have a wonderful time.
Absolutely. So what are you entering in the Cultivators Cup?
So we can't say. It is a blind. That's why we like the cup.
Whoa, that's so
that's
exciting.
why. Yeah, so it's it's all compliant, it's all through, you provide, the COAs, their certificate of authenticity, they provide that in the judge's kit. But basically, kind of as the rule, you're not allowed to kind of say, so, they put you in the kit and then they put a number on it, and then, the people vote for the best number, and then you're not allowed to say kind of, what number you are. And so it makes it fun. And also it's, as much as the brand is a part of, this community, it's about the plant, right? So that's why we really like this, we like the blind competitions, because we really feel like it's a celebration of that. And so, and it brings out the best of the community too, because, there is no, that's great. We all have fancy packaging, right? But it's what's behind that. So.
Absolutely. And the proof is in the actual product itself. So Pina Grande won that last year.
It did.
Wow.
Yes.
So cool. Man, I wish I could get my hands on one of those. I'll have to work it out with Pro Cannabis Media. See if we can get a special delivery down to Texas. So Zach, what is next for you specifically? Do you see yourself with Bountiful Farms forever, or are you kind of hoping that, I don't know, are you hoping to go off and go back to, your own grow, maybe your own craft cannabis grow, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm very happy and content where I am. I see myself as bountiful for life, more or less. You never know what's gonna happen in this world, but I built this, and I don't plan on leaving it. But I think the greatest thing about this is it's so much more than me, and I think that's, I guess, where the whole master grower notion is. It's not me. It's we're almost 90 employees deep. Yes, I certainly was one of the people, that helped, kind of put this energy in motion. But it's an object in motion, stage in motion, and so it's that kinetic energy through the love of the commonality of this plant that really pushes it forward, and that certainly is not through me. That's through everyone.
Absolutely. So where can people find Bountiful Farms flower, or the dispensary? I guess it's the only place you can find it, or can you find it?
So we we're fortunate enough that we have just recently had several harvests in our new expansion. So in Massachusetts, you're rated on your square feet of canopy. So we're a little under 30,000 square feet of canopy, and we just had 3 new rooms coming on live. And so our our mothership, more or less, is in Natick, Massachusetts. Now that is a medical only dispensary. We try to kind of have our broadish brushstroke there, and what I mean by that is we have all of our varieties at Natick. But we are fortunate enough now to where we do have, a lot more products, with the expansion. And so we are, I believe, upwards of 35 retail partners. So we're hitting kind of all cardinal directions, everywhere from, the Cape, up north, down to, central Mass. So, we're really trying to, kind of disperse throughout. And then, we're taking on, more retail partners as well. So we're really excited about that.
It's so exciting that you are getting your medicine to all corners of Massachusetts. So everybody gets to experience, what you're doing, the Bountiful Farms quality. I think that's awesome, to be able to scale like that. So what is out in the market now? And so if I were in Massachusetts right now, what would you tell me to go out and get my hands on from Bountiful?
From Bountiful, I would definitely tell you to get your hands on some rosin. We also have rosin pens. They're phenomenal. And then, in terms of, I think that it's always nice to kind of have that night smoke and that day smoke. So I would absolutely say for, that euphoria and, that trip back to the old school, you have to get your hands on some pina for your nighttime. I would definitely recommend some garlic breath, something that's gonna, take your edge off a little bit, maybe a little Colorado Bubba in there. So, something that's really gonna help you, exhale more or less.
Oh, I love that. You gotta have the Colorado Bubba. I mean, you gotta have that. That's
She's classic.
Absolutely. She's been with you for a very, very long time.
She is.
She's your girl. So I hate to break it to everyone, but unfortunately, that is all the time we have tonight with Zach Taylor. We will not call him a master grower. We'll call him an award-winning cultivator and lover of cultivation from Bountiful Farms in Massachusetts. Zach, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Will you come back?
Liz, the pleasure is truly mine. Thank you so much.
So where can people find you in case anyone is too shy to ask questions in the chat room tonight? Where could people find you?
Please reach out to the Bountiful Farms Instagram. It's just one word, Bountiful Farms. And I would be, more than happy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Zach, for your time. Be sure, guys, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for tonight, but be sure to check back in on August the 10th we have our next live episode. And on August the 10th, we'll have our another award-winning cultivator, Genevieve Newton. She is out of Canada. She is the head of cultivation for Stewart Farms Aquaponics. Do you know Genevieve?
No, I just think it's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, she's the bomb. I've had the pleasure of interviewing her before, and gosh, she has a wealth of knowledge, and just great to learn from. So we'll have Genevieve on the 10th. But again, special thanks to Zach Taylor from Bountiful Farms. Zach, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with all cannabis growers really looking to flourish. So Calling All Growers is produced by Pro Cannabis Media with help from Grow House Media and generous support from our sponsors. Again, we'll see you back here at our live show in 2 weeks on August 10th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm Liz Grow, and I'm calling all growers. We'll see you next time.
We've got breaking news for all farmers and growers out there. How would you like to defer the taxes you pay on your grow? Now you can legally, thanks to a discovery by agricultural tax attorney Michael Berwick of the law firm Greenspoon Martyr.
I have been working with tax deferral for 20 years, and my team at Greenspoon Martyr in the tax area got together with our team in the cannabis area. And putting our heads together collectively, we have determined that this major tax deferral clause includes the growing of cannabis.
Now, don't think that this is a new tax code clause because it's been around for over a century.
Absolutely. This provision's been around for over 100 years. It was designed for agriculture. It was put in force at a time when we had a much more agrarian economy, big lobby for agriculture and farming, and that definition of agriculture has grown and expanded over the years. And again, it now includes cannabis.
How does it work?
Essentially, it will allow the taxpayer, if done correctly through us, it will allow the taxpayer to defer all state and federal ordinary income taxes for 30 years.
To find out more and see if you qualify as a grower, contact Michael Berwick at 305-789-2761 or call toll-free 888-491-1120 and ask for Michael Berwick's office, or just email him at michael.berwick, that's BURWICK, at gmlaw.com.
Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information.
It stands for Regulation Crowdfunding. And what it is, the SEC put together this plan after the Great Recession back in 2008, 2009, where we were bailing out Wall Street. The big bailouts, too big to fail. So we're bailing out huge banks like Bank of America. We're bailing out Ford Motor Company, et cetera, while the little guys on Main Street are closing their doors. Oh, well. And there was so much backlash that initially under the Obama administration, they created this Reg CF plan. And it was so popular and it worked so well that under Trump, they doubled down on it and expanded the program. And what it does is it allows the average retail investor like you and me to be able to invest in pre-IPO companies, basically buy shares of companies.